All right, thanks for coming into this session. Quick show of hands, how many people here are actually selling on Amazon? Yep, and how many people are selling on eBay? All right, a smaller number, not surprising, that's fine. We did an eBay masterclass yesterday and the numbers were very much the same. Obviously, America, Amazon is a very, very large marketplace. It's kind of the first thought on people's minds when they think about selling on a marketplace. eBay is perhaps a second thought, and sometimes it's not even thought about at all. We've had a number of presenters so far through the conference kind of drop hints that maybe eBay is something that should be thought about. So I wanted to do a session to really compare the two marketplaces, have a look at the differences between them, and then perhaps help you to decide where you should be trading, where you should be concentrating your energy. A little bit firstly about myself. I run a firm called Zealous. I worked with eBay for about 5 years as their seller education manager, and through that process I got to meet a lot of businesses, a lot of retailers, small businesses, mum and pop businesses and larger businesses, and found very, very similar issues right throughout all of them, no matter whether it was a small business or a large business. The one overriding thing that everybody is always looking for is obviously to sell, more importantly to make profit, regardless of the channels that you might be selling on. So the work that we do now primarily works with online merchants, whether they have websites, eBay stores, Amazon accounts. We do a lot of integration, data optimization, and strategy and website development and design for them. That's a bit of my background anyway. So what I want to go through today is to have a bit of a look first, before we dive straight into marketplaces and have a look at the two big ones, just have a look at exactly what's happening and has happened to retail recently. Why marketplaces? Why should you even be wasting, or let's say not wasting, why should you be spending your time on a marketplace as opposed to putting effort into your own website and your own channels? Let's look at the two, eBay and Amazon, and then how you deal with the challenges that you meet in a marketplace, and obviously, most importantly, building a sustainable business. This is kind of like what retail looks like today. It's a strange new world. And if you've been in business for many years, that's probably how you're feeling. Things are evolving and changing so rapidly, it's sometimes very, very hard to keep up, even for those of us that are in the industry working in it all the time. There's always a new bit of technology or something coming out. So we refer to it collectively as new retail. It is still retail, but there's some new ways of doing things. Let's just have a look at the situation in the US. Now, these are the best stats that I could find. Whether they're entirely 100% accurate, I'm not entirely sure, but they're pretty close. Let's knock out all the people that are under 18 years old because they're not allowed to have a credit card legally. So we'll assume that they don't shop online because you need pretty much a credit card to shop online. We know that there's around 237 million people shopping online in the US, which is most, okay? Which means if you deduct those two, you're left with about 15 million people that actually only shop offline. They don't shop online, and of course they still have to go shopping. A very small number. So what we also know is that there's roughly about 10% of all spending is done online. So that 237 million people account for 10% of all spending of all retail, which means the other 15 million people are responsible for 90% of offline spending. That doesn't make sense, does it? That completely doesn't make sense. The reality is, people that shop online also shop offline. They're not different people. The people that you are selling to, if you're an online retailer or an online merchant, whether you're on a marketplace or on your own website, are the same people that go into the shopping malls and go into the physical shops out here on the strip and in whichever city you live. They're the same people, which means the same principles as apply in retail apply online. It's just the mechanisms and the process can be a little bit different. But I think this is a really important thing to get in clear. The tombstone on the left there indicates that, you know, the whole argument about whether online is better or offline is better is completely and utterly dead. It's gone. It's now all about actually reaching the customer, no matter where they happen to be. What's also happened with retail is that there's been a development of technologies, and especially social media and sharing communications platforms, which means that the way that we shop has changed as well. It's not just online and offline. It's even more mixed up than that. So you may be walking down the street and see something in a shop window and go, geez, that looks nice. You know, pull out the mobile phone, take a photo of it, send it to your friend via SMS. They then go and post the picture on Facebook. Their friend sees it, posts it somewhere else, somebody else sees it. I mean, this is how people communicate. By the time you've had your coffee and walked back past the same shop window again, 5 people have said you should go in and try it on because it looks really good. Find out how much it is. Let me know. Get me 2 because I want one. And so you go into the shop and you try it on. And the shop assistant says, you look fantastic in that. You should take it home. Got a special deal for you today. If you buy one today, we give you 10% off, and it's all very tempting, but it's the $300 item. And you're just not sure. And this is the old way of doing retail. You were stuck there. You had to make a decision on the spot. You couldn't sit there and pull out your phone and compare prices. You had to just decide, is it worth it or not? But now, I do it all the time. I go into a shop, pull up an item, look at it and go, hang on, let me check on eBay, let me check on Amazon, look at the price. No, I can get it half price. We all do it. The person then goes home, sits down watching their favourite show on TV in the evening on their iPad or their phone or whatever, and then goes and buys it somewhere else, finds it on a marketplace. The question is the transaction online or offline? See, the different parts of the journey have actually taken place at different channels altogether. This is important perspective to understand, because when we're talking about trading on a marketplace, we're not only talking about a very sort of insular experience from the buyer, it's right across a lot of different channels. It's not isolated to that one place. So why do we like to shop online? Well, lots of reasons really. Firstly, we don't have to bother with the traffic. We don't have to find a park for the car. We don't even have to pay as much. We can stay at home. We can do it from pretty much anywhere at any time of the day. We can do it whenever it suits us. The bottom two to me are probably some of the greatest benefits. That is, distance is irrelevant. Meaning, even if we live in the middle of the desert, like here, plenty of shops around here, but even if you live in the middle of nowhere, you've still got access to pretty much anything from everywhere. That's a great benefit. In Australia, which is a very large country, similar size to North America, there's a lot of people that live in very remote areas that just simply don't have the selection of retail shops that you would have in the bigger cities. So for them, online is just an absolute saviour. And particularly in access to a greater range of products. So again, with the distance in mind, you're not only looking at vendors that are just down the road from you, but you're also looking at people that might be selling from another country. You get access to clothing from different countries. You can get the fashion trends from Europe before they hit America, for example. And so it starts to open up a whole different way of doing shopping. So the first rule of retail is not that the customer's always right. I know that's the one that we always hear. I think the first rule of retail is that we should be where the customer is. Right? It's a bit different in the old days. You set up your stall, the customer would come to you. Now, we have to effectively go to the customer. So the question very simply is, where are your customers? That's a preface to what we're about to talk about with marketplaces. So where are your customers? How well do you know your customers? Do you know what they like? Do you know where they shop? Do you know what social media they watch, what channels they operate on, what payment methods they like to use, what's convenient for them? Because if you do, then you'll pretty much know where to trade. So as we've indicated from the way that retail is changing, we're now getting a bit of a blurring of the different channels. Right, so people shop on their mobile phone. About 10 years ago, I was selling online, and I had about 5% of transactions were coming through mobile phones. Now it's closer to 60, 70%. It's dramatically higher. People just on a mobile phone, a tiny little thing like this. Right? You don't have that big, immersive, huge, big screen to sit there and make up a beautiful website that all the bells and whistles. It's a tiny little device. That's a very, very different communication challenge. People will shop in a physical store, but then they'll go later and buy from the same retailer on their website or on a marketplace from their eBay store or something like that. So things are changing quite dramatically. And we would refer to it as omni-channel. You've heard the term multi-channel, omni-channel, more or less the same thing. But the idea is you don't just pick one. If you want to reach your customers are actually not only shopping in one place, they're shopping in several places. So as part of the evolution of your business, you're thinking about expanding into those different channels that your customers tend to frequent more, so that you have more opportunities to have your brand and your products in front of those customers. What's also happening is not just the way that people are shopping is changing, but also the whole supply chain is also being disrupted. So the traditional sort of format, somebody would come up with an idea, they'd design it, they'd go and find somebody to manufacture it and make it, and then they'd pack it up, and then they'd send it off to a distributor. Then the distributor would go and send it out through their retail network to their retail stores, and then you and me would then walk into the store and buy this product, which is about 10 times what it actually costs to make. That's the old way of doing it. Every single person in that flow has to take a clip on the way through. They've got to take a bit of money. This is what it looks like now. Anybody can be the designer can sell straight to the consumer, the designer can actually go straight to a manufacturer, the manufacturer might even sell straight to the consumer themselves. They might not have distributors, or the distributor might actually forget about the retailers and go direct to market. There's a lot of options. I won't say it's confusing, but there's a lot of options now. And from the experience that I had working with eBay, we were working with a lot of brands who are effectively the manufacturer or the designer, whichever way you want to look at it, trying to get them to sell on the eBay marketplace, but they didn't understand the end consumer. They weren't used to dealing with all the crazy questions that end customers want to ask. They were used to just getting it out into a retail store. So this is all changing. And because it's all changing, it presents opportunities as much as it does challenges. So the rise of omnichannel. Now, Officeworks is a store in Australia. I'm not familiar enough with the American retail environment to pick a store in the US, but I'm sure there's many, many that would be like this. Officeworks is kind of, as it says, it's an office supplies store, as the name suggests, and they are kind of everywhere. They've got an eBay store, you've got their own YouTube channel, they're on Facebook, they've got their own website. You can shop on their iPad app or a mobile phone. You can send an order via fax. You can actually telephone an order in still, like the old way. You can physically walk into a store. And in speaking to the senior management from Officeworks, which is Australia's largest office supplies supplier or retailer, I quizzed them because they said they wanted to launch onto eBay before they launched onto eBay, and I said, look, that's great. I was working for eBay at the time, so come and join eBay. That's great. But what products are you going to list? And they said everything. I said, well, that's music to my ears because I want everything to be listed, but it's not the usual response we get. From a big retailer, they kind of say, we'll just put all our clearance stuff onto eBay because that's kind of what eBay was known for at the time, just a clearance channel. And I said, that's great, but explain to me your thinking. And what he said, now this is about 7 or 8 years ago, this is very, very advanced for that time. He said, we are Officeworks. We don't care where the customer comes from, how the customer wants to buy it, how they want to deal with us. We will give them the same service, the same experience, the same price, the same products right across the board. Wow. That was really surprising to hear back then. It's not so surprising these days. More and more retailers are starting to realise that. But that was really quite an amazing revelation at that point in time. For smaller retailers, merchants, sellers, whether you're on marketplaces, your own website, starting a business, or you've been going for some time, this is kind of the aspiration. This is the goal, I think, that you want to ultimately head at. Bearing in mind that to invest in each of these channels can take some time, can take some money, can take some effort, and especially if you're in a small business, a mum and pop type business just starting, maybe operating from home or from small premises with a small team, you may not have the resources yet to do all of this yourself. And there's a lot of exhibitors out in the next room which can probably help with that as well. But that's kind of the goal, that's the ideal place to be. The benefit of omnichannel means you get greater reach. It means that you can actually now tap into those buyers on all the different places that they like to shop. They like to go and watch things on YouTube, then they see your products or your ads or your logos and so forth popping up every now and again. So you're actually there, front of mind. The thing is, if you're not there, then your competitors are. And so your customers are now being exposed to an alternative to you or to your products or to your brand. However, omnichannel also means more competition, right? That's the reality from a vendor's point of view. Omnichannel means you're now competing with many more people than are in your local area, which of course presents some challenges. And nothing could be truer of marketplaces as well. So, why marketplaces? You could sort of go into all these individual channels yourself, but marketplaces are effectively a giant website that is pulling their own traffic to their own website so that people can buy stuff, just like you do on your own website. The thing is that they've got bigger budgets than you or I do, so they spend a lot on search engine optimization, marketing, advertising, social, communications. They spend huge budgets on that. Amazon and eBay, two great examples. I understand that eBay is one of Google's biggest customers. They actually spend an absolute fortune on paid advertising through Google to try and keep that traffic coming back into their website, and Amazon does the same. So let's just have a think about the options that you would have in running a business in the offline or the online space. So you can see in the grid there on the left, in the yellow section, offline, you've got two options. You either have a standalone shop or you go into a shopping mall, right? And some would want one and some would want the other. There's going to be different opinions about which one's best. The challenge with having a standalone shop is that it might be cheaper rent, but there's no customers walking past. A shopping mall's got lots of customers walking past, but you're going to pay a lot of money for it. Which one's better? I don't know. That's up to you. But they're your options. When it comes to the online space, it's pretty much exactly the same. You can set up your own website and you can have it doing all sorts of wonderful things, or you can go into an online marketplace or maybe several. And again, the same challenges and the same questions are there. Your own website, you can make it look exactly how you want it. On the marketplace, maybe you're limited in doing that, but it might cost you more to set up your own website. On the marketplaces, it can be cheaper. There's more competition on the marketplace, no competition on your website. See, there's pluses and minuses. So let's have a look at a couple of those. The green section there, the pluses. Having your own website means it's your own branding. You're not competing with other people putting ads on your website. That would never happen, right? You're no competitors. You've got total control over the design. It's a blank page. You can have whatever drop-downs you like and whatever pop-ups you like. It's entirely up to you. The fourth point down, I think, is an interesting one. Your failures are less visible. Marketplaces tend to be very transparent. So you have feedbacks left, reviews left. You tend to get marked down if you do things wrong by the marketplace, and it tends to be transparent for people to see. On your own website, if something goes missing, it's not like you've got a review or a feedback page where people go, I lost my parcel, as if you would allow that to be published on your own website anyway. There's that's maybe seen as an advantage, perhaps, to have a website. There's also no distractions for the customer. They're not being distracted by other things calling for their attention or saying, you looked at this product, maybe come and look at these and their competitors' products. So you're not dealing with any of that. On the negative side, you've got to generate your own traffic. The traffic's not automatically going to come there. You could come up with the best domain name in the world, but nobody knows it exists until you start telling them. That means you've got to either be paying for advertising or have very, very good PR people to be able to get articles out into the media and the news and so on. It can be expensive advertising. It can also be harder to find you. So sometimes a good domain name can be hard to find. So people will get versions with a hyphen in it or spelt in a funny way because that's the only one they could get. Probably not a really good practice, but it can make it challenging for people to actually then find you, let alone remember you as well. Mobile optimization is up there. I've written that down as a negative because what it means is you do need to make sure that whatever website design you do, that it is mobile optimized. That's something you need to do, as opposed to the marketplaces which are already mobile optimized when you put your data onto them. On the plus side of the marketplaces, buyers are already there, as we said. You've got secure payment gateways. There's trust already in the marketplace itself. Amazon, eBay and other marketplaces already have a degree of trust from the people that shop there regularly. So there's no question about the security of what's going to happen to my money if I feed it into the machine. There's also seller protection, which is good. So if a buyer does try and scam you, more times than not, you'll generally find that you get marketplace support if you followed all the correct processes. There's also reporting tools, which you would not necessarily get from your own website. Or you may have to pay extra for it, but those things generally come with the marketplaces, and there's usually opportunities to actually market and advertise within those marketplaces as well. On the contrary, there's also very high standards. As we know, to become one of the top-rated sellers on eBay and one of the top sellers on Amazon, to get that buy box is a very big challenge, and you've got to be absolutely competitive and absolutely doing everything best as possible. There's also the transparency. There's buyer protection, which can work against you if you haven't done things right as well, and obviously lots of competition. So the marketplaces, essentially, that's kind of a summary. I like to call them, I don't know if you guys call them that over there. You call them trainer wheels on a bike when you're learning to ride a bike. So I like to say it's e-commerce with training wheels. That's effectively what marketplaces are. So the marketplaces have big budgets. They follow the buyer. They know what the buyer's like. They know the platforms that the buyers like to use and to engage with. They know the way that they like to shop. And so they set up their experience, which then you as a seller on that marketplace have no choice about. You've got to plug into the way that they do it. Right? That's how it works. But the benefit of that is, as we've said, there's structured e-commerce means you're actually learning how to do things the best way. If you can run a successful business on Amazon, on eBay, or on any of these marketplaces, really you can probably run a fairly successful business on a website too, providing you can get the traffic, because these marketplaces are already right at the cutting edge of the shopping experience. Another great benefit is the last thing there, test and learn. You've got the ability to jump in and make changes, list something, test it for a few days, selling, not selling, change a price, and get instant results back usually with that as well. So that's pretty cool. So let's say that you've gone and set up a nice eBay store. It looks wonderful, looks like your website, looks nice and engaging, and you're selling some great products, great prices, you've got really top rating, everything's all great. And a buyer comes in and goes, this looks really good, I wonder who these guys are, Officeworks, what a cool name, I wonder who they are. And they go and search you up in Google, and that's what they see. You're smoked. Because then they think, oh, it's just an eBay seller, oh, it's just an Amazon seller. Like as though that's not serious, right? People make millions of dollars selling on the marketplace only, but to the customer, they kind of go, you're not really a real business, you're just like pretending, okay? This again goes back to what I said earlier about the idea of operating on multiple channels. So my view is that having a website is kind of essential. It doesn't have to be amazing, but it does need to at least be there to represent your brand. So if somebody finds you in a marketplace and then goes, hang on, who are these people? Go and have a bit of a look, that you've actually got a presence that they can go to. Because if they haven't, it reduces your credibility in the marketplace, and of course that can result in lower sales. So good lesson, hopefully. All right, let's have a look at eBay and Amazon. So first thing is, they're pretty much the same in many respects. They're both marketplaces, of course. People can search for things, they can browse. They both got a shopping cart, which everybody uses, so you sort of don't have your own. There's communication protocols on the platform to message buyers and sellers. There's programs, guarantee programs, loyalty programs. Look, they're all the same. I don't need to go through the similarities. What I really want to highlight is what the differences actually are. So here's some numbers. These was the best numbers that I could get. I have seen some slightly different numbers around, but they're going to be pretty close if they're not exact. Amazon is sort of very limited in the information they give out about their marketplace, so we just had to do the best we could. So let's have a look at the two marketplaces. Pretty clear that the numbers on the left are definitely bigger than the ones on the right for a start, but that's no surprise, we already know that. 310 million active buyers around the world compared to just over half that for eBay. So Amazon's by far a lot bigger, okay? Country sites, yeah, eBay's got a few more, but at the end of the day, they've got more buyers on Amazon, so it probably doesn't really matter. And in terms of GMV, or gross merchandise value, or sales, total volume of products sold, Amazon's literally double eBay, pretty much. So it's a lot bigger. So no real surprises there. In the US alone, almost $100 billion in the US, 197 million visitors monthly compared to 113 visitors monthly. So if it's a competition as to who's the biggest, well, there's no contest. Amazon's the biggest. But that's not the issue, is it? The issue is you guys want to sell products. The issue is you guys want to make profit. The issue is where can your products be found, where can they be sold, and do you really mean to tell me that 113 million visitors are of no interest to you at all? All right, it's a silly question, right? It's all right, we're not finished yet. Okay, here's another thing that we all know, but probably don't really perhaps think about it quite as stark as this. In the US, the best numbers that I could find were that the third-party sellers account for around 64% of all sales on Amazon. So it's a bit more than half, which a few of the other presenters have said as well. So that means that about around $63 billion. So again, if it's the biggest, well, Amazon's the biggest. So for you guys as a third-party seller, the opportunity on Amazon is massive. But, you know, eBay's nothing to be sneezed at too. Yes, I know it's about half the amount, but it's still billions of dollars. It's still pretty big. This one is really interesting though. So eBay does not compete with its own sellers. eBay's not a retailer. Amazon is. There's been some reports coming out recently where Amazon has been making moves to hire people to actually look at building their own in-house brand products. You may have seen some of those articles. And the experts, I'm not one of those, but the experts are suggesting that it indicates that Amazon's probably about to start investing quite a bit into developing its own private label brands with the data and the insights and the metrics that they've got from all the sales of people like yourselves on Amazon selling your products and making a profit, because they have that data, right? Is it an abuse of data? I don't know. They're a retailer. You're playing in their backyard. It's not like you went in there and not knowing that that was the case. It's not a reason not to sell on Amazon. It's not what I'm saying, but we just need to be aware of that as well. Amazon does compete with its own sellers. With eBay, you can actually customize your own titles for every single product. You can write your own descriptions for every product, and you can put up your own images for every product On Amazon, you can't. The first person who registers the product gets to describe it and put up the pictures, but that's it. Everyone after that, that's what they get. That's a big difference. Because what it means is that you can actually customize your product listings, you can customize your brand experience and your buying experience on eBay, which you cannot do on Amazon. There are some ways of doing it on Amazon, very limited, but that's usually only for sort of more prominent brands, and you've got to pay a fee for it. But on eBay, everybody can do it. Another great benefit, at least for now, is that eBay allows you to get your payment immediately. So the customer pays you directly. Whereas with Amazon, it goes through Amazon, they hold the money, and then you get it released a bit later. Now, it looks like eBay is heading towards that model as well, but for the time being, you actually do get paid immediately, so that's pretty cool. So there are some differences between the marketplaces, even though Amazon is perhaps a lot bigger. This is another thing that if you've been selling on Amazon and not on eBay, you may not know this, but the fees on eBay generally are substantially lower than they are on Amazon. This is worth keeping in mind. So some people argue, well, Amazon's bigger, so it doesn't matter if I pay more. Well, hang on, you're trying to make profit not on the volume of products you're selling necessarily, but on every product that you sell. So if your margins can actually be lower because you're paying a lower fee back to the marketplace, well, then in theory, you could actually drop your price slightly, right, and still make the same amount of profit. And that's why sometimes when you look at the same products on the two marketplaces, you'll sometimes find they're cheaper on eBay, just slightly. I've found that quite a bit. We've just had Amazon launch in Australia, but just not quite a year ago. And that's been one of the big observations coming out from a lot of people looking at the same product on both marketplaces. Typically, they're cheaper on eBay than they are on Amazon, so far. That might change, but so far. Interesting. So yeah, that's worth bearing in mind as well. To have a look at the difference in the product page. So you've listed a product, you've got the information up there, and on the left, that's how it looks on Amazon. On the right, this is an example of one of my clients on eBay. We did a nice design for them. Let's just remove all the bits that belong to eBay and Amazon and leave what's left to the actual seller. Did you see that? Let me go back. Okay, not too much disappears on this side, but on that side, it's all Amazon stuff. It's all actually designed to actually be promoting what Amazon thinks is going to sell, because Amazon makes money when things sell, not just because you sell. In fact, eBay is the same. The marketplaces only make money, of course, when buyers buy, not when sellers sell. But what it means is on the right-hand side here, you've got the opportunity to create a very immersive customer experience with drop-down menus and you know, brand boxes and links and footers and all sorts of things going on there as well. Just a couple more examples of listings. These are actual live listings on eBay. I mean, they look like a website, right? So it allows you, as I'm saying, on eBay, it allows you to actually create a brand experience which reflects your business and your brand, even though you're in a marketplace. It's like being in a shopping mall and being told you're only allowed to have a white storefront and no branding, just a word that says your name and that's it. Or you can actually do your own shop fitting and your own merchandising. There's quite a bit of difference there. So it's a much nicer branding experience on eBay. So, going back to the first rule of retail, be where the customer is, all right? Where are your customers? Of course, we can see that there's 197 million people on Amazon, there's 113 million on eBay. So far, I'm leaning towards you probably should be on both. That's kind of where I'm heading, all right? All right, so you're on a marketplace, which you are already, and perhaps you're going to open into another marketplace. The reality of a marketplace is that it's kind of like that. How do you get found? Now, I'm not going to go into all the strategies on how you actually get found in a marketplace. I'm just saying food for thought. It's not your own website. You're not curating your own space. You don't have total control over the buyer experience. The marketplace themselves will be putting their own ads and their own related items wherever they choose, wherever they want to try and maximise sales for them, for their profit, not necessarily for yours. So you've got to understand what the marketplaces are doing, what the limitations and the opportunities are that you can sort of tap into within that framework. But, you know, if you're one of the blue tents, how are you going to stand out from the others? It's a little bit challenging, isn't it, right? Knowing who you're competing with is also important. And the reality is that there is a lot of reasons why people will be selling on a marketplace. They're not all selling for the same reason as you are. Sometimes they're quitting old stock, which means they don't care about profit, which means they're not competing with your price if you're selling the same products or similar products to it. All right? So you've got to pick your battles. You're not going to compete with everybody on price. Sometimes you've got people that are selling for others, which means they've got to actually charge a bit higher price because they've got to get a little margin in it. Sometimes people are just doing it for a bit of a hobby, a bit of pocket money. There's all sorts of motivations. So don't assume that your competitors are actually in business for the same motivations as you are, and therefore don't necessarily try and compete with them if they're not actually in business for the same reasons. I'd like to introduce you to your average marketplace customer. It's actually known quite well that when we look at screens, we tend to get a bit hypnotised, right? I think one of the previous speakers said that we visit Facebook 16 times a day or something like that. It's hypnotic, not just Facebook, but shopping online especially when things look really nice. The models always look better than we do. The clothes always look better online than they do when we finally get them. And it's very hypnotic. And we actually tend to kind of go to sleep. The reason I say that is because in a marketplace, it's no different. The shoppers are shopping around there, clicking their mouse or scrolling on their phone with their mouth half open, like, right? They're kind of just bumbling around. So in order for you to get the sale, it has to be easy. It has to be blindingly obvious and super easy so that a person that's half asleep could still actually buy it and actually know what they're doing. So that also represents another challenge. And with the two marketplaces with a slightly different way of doing things, it means that there's different ways that you have to do what you do on those marketplaces to get the effect you want. One of the biggest questions I get asked by my clients and sellers in Australia, how do they get to the Amazon buy box, right? You guys in the US probably know a lot more about this than we do because we've only had Amazon in Australia for a short time. The interesting thing is, you notice I put buy box up in the middle and the Amazon eBay logo's either side. eBay never used to have a buy box, but they've actually got one now. They don't call it that. They call it a product landing page or a PLP or a PLA. So it's a product landing page. And the idea is that if you submit the barcode, the product code or something like that to eBay, they will actually aggregate and group all of the products that are the same, which Amazon's been doing forever, and put them on one page. Right? That makes sense. From a buyer's point of view, that's a great experience because it means if I'm looking for an iPhone of a particular model, I know that I'm looking at all exactly the same product. I don't have to sit there and try and work out which one's which. So it's a great buyer experience, so it makes sense. There are some differences, obviously, with the Amazon catalogue and the eBay catalogue. With Amazon, whoever registers the product first, it's their description, their pictures, their title, until somebody changes it or the manufacturer changes it. But as a general seller, if you're selling that product, you can't really influence or change that. On eBay, of course, you can actually do it yourself. So the differentiating strategies are quite different on the two marketplaces. There's a lot of things that are going to be common, right? Everybody can change their price, everybody can change their returns policies, but on Amazon, you either are faced with the idea of a private brand strategy, a private label strategy, where you're actually registering your own products or getting an exemption for the barcodes, if that is appropriate, so that your products can actually appear in search, and you're not actually or sort of behind the buy box of everybody else's products. That's sort of the holy grail, if you like, of Amazon, as to the way to actually be found. And of course, you can advertise on Amazon, and we've heard plenty about that. On eBay, though, you've got a lot more options because of the ability to customise your eBay description, your title, your images. It means you can actually list your own products on eBay as well. So private label strategy still works on eBay. Curiously, at the time I was working for eBay a couple of years ago, that was not even something we would have even spoken about. But now, it's now very much a real strategy for people to actually invest in private label on eBay. So that's perhaps food for thought. We're at the cutting edge of that now. Obviously, you have the ability to apply your business branding, which, again, you're pretty much limited on Amazon not actually being able to do. To actually win in a marketplace really requires, at a high level, this is a very high level, you've got to really understand yourself, your competitors, and your customers. If you understand those reasonably well, you can't just wing it. You can't just throw products up there and hope that they're going to sell. So know yourself, know your strengths and know your weaknesses. Know what you can actually do yourself. Don't try to be everything for everybody because you can't. If you're a big organisation, 50 people, 100 people working in your business, yeah, you can segregate all those different things. But if you're one person or a small husband-wife team or something like that, that's a lot of work. It's very, very hard to sort of juggle all those things all at once. Really focus on what your advantages are. What is your point of difference? If you were sitting in the e-pitch competition before, a number of times the judges asked the question, what's your point of difference? You've explained something that we've heard of before. We've heard this service or this solution before, but what's different about you? You need to do the same as a retailer as well, and really highlight that in the way that you do business. While on Amazon you may not be able to customize your storefront or your listings in the way that you can on eBay, you can still, if you're actually sending parcels out yourself direct to customers, you can still put in some promotional materials to sort of drive that message home a little bit further. So that's a limitation of using FBA. There's pros and cons either side. Again, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't use it, but these are just things that you need to think about. Consider also in just relying on the marketplace. If you're only relying on the or either or both marketplaces for your business and one of them changes their policies so it doesn't suit you, what happens to your business? All right, it's like putting all your eggs in one, or in this case maybe two baskets. You need to spread yourself a little bit further. Understand your customers too. Sometimes I get to work with sellers that have a very wide range of products that's so broad that it's really hard to know exactly what they are. Are they a hardware store or homewares or fashion? Or it's a bit hard to work out what they are. So have a think carefully about the customers that you're actually pitching to and make sure that your product selection, your product range actually suits what the customers are actually looking for and what actually makes sense with the products that you already sell. I'm not a big fan of actually just selling things that look like they'll make profit, because if you discovered a gem that you think can make a lot of profit, well, I'll guarantee you 100 other people did as well. And even if they didn't do it before you, they will catch up very, very quickly. So that's first mover advantage is not really a sustainable business model. Knowing the competitors, I've got down here, amongst other things, report violations. I can't speak for Amazon. I know for eBay, certainly, that they do rely a lot on reports coming back of people that are violating policies. I won't go through what all of those are, but it's worth doing that. This is a way of you also keeping your competitors in check. Don't let them get an unfair advantage because they're bending the rules and breaking the rules where you might have got into trouble for it, but they didn't. And also knowing when to compete. So like I said, you will get people that are sometimes just clearing stock. So if they're clearing stock and their price is going to be a lot lower than yours and you're not making a profit to sell at that price, well, clearly you're not going to go to that price. So we go right back to kind of where we started. And to answer the question, which of the marketplaces should you trade on? You should be where your customers are. And so where are your customers? There is a thought perhaps that, or a perception you might say, that brand new products are on Amazon and second-hand goods are on eBay. That is completely not true. Completely not true. Around 80 to 90% of products on eBay are brand new. Fixed price, not auctions. So eBay that we knew 10 years ago is not the eBay of today. They're accelerating, so yeah. It's not meant as a pitch for eBay. I hope you don't sort of read it that way. But whatever you're doing with your business now, whichever of these marketplaces you're actually trading in, if you haven't considered eBay, I would encourage you to have a good look at it, because you can add a significant sales channel to your business, maybe even double your business if you have the right products. Bearing in mind too that a lot of customers tend to be loyal to one marketplace because they're used to it, they're familiar, they've got the app on their phone. So you will often find that there are customers on eBay that have never been to Amazon or don't shop on Amazon very much, and you may find that your products actually get taken up there very well. We're just about out of time. Is there any questions anybody's got before we wrap it up? Yep.
To your point about where the customer is there any distinctions in terms of demos, gender, product categories between
Right.
eBay and Amazon?
Right, so the question is there any difference in gender difference, demographics, and even product types on Amazon to eBay? There are some differences in terms of the way that the shopping experience is across those categories. eBay has more categories than Amazon. Amazon started as primarily a book and media seller and then has expanded, whereas eBay has kind of tried to be everything. I don't really think there's a lot of difference in the demographic, no. Other than that, I don't really think so, no. I think we've been given the wrap-up, sorry. Thanks, guys. The next session starts in a couple of minutes' time, so make your way to the next session, or if you're here for that, the next one. Thanks very much for listening.